before I get into too many details, we are talking about the state of Cypress and app quality. I just want to spend a few minutes recapping a few things that I mentioned a year ago at the last Sci conference. Back then, we introduced, our intention to pursue app quality, and we shared a little bit about how we think we can get there. So, in case you missed it, what we really mean by that is that we stated that we want to evolve beyond just helping teams write and manage tests. Specifically, we stated that where we're headed ultimately is towards improving application quality, and doing that by providing teams with clear visibility into the health and quality of their applications in order to continuously deliver innovation faster. And here's how we think about that. So, the way that we envisioned accomplishing our vision is to deliver app quality insights, right? And to do so in a way that naturally extends the value of the existing tests that you've already written, that you've already invested in. In doing so, we believe that will significantly improve the ROI of engineering time, because we all know that is the most expensive thing, and be able to answer more questions about quality, about application quality. And today, when you're writing tests in Cypress, you're primarily answering just one question about quality. Does the application work? Is it functionally correct? But there are many other questions that are just as important when we think about measuring what your actual application's quality is. For instance, have you fully covered your application with tests? Is your application accessible and usable by everyone? Is it visually correct? Have there been any visual changes? And is it fast and performant? And a year ago, we talked about the products that we were investing in that we believe would help us deliver on our mission. And as we fast forward from a year ago to today, I can proudly say that as part of that pursuit, we're happy to announce that the general availability of our two newest products in the app quality space, which is UI Coverage and Cypress Accessibility. UI Coverage helps you visualize, identify, and improve testing gaps with reports that everyone on your team can understand. And Cypress Accessibility provides you immediate and comprehensive automated accessibility checks on every Cypress test that you've already written. And I want to spend next few moments just kind of getting a little bit deeper into each of these products. But no, this is just going to be an overview. There's a talk after mine that's also about UI coverage. And if you're curious about accessibility, Mark Noonan, the product manager for accessibility, is going to be talking about this at day two tomorrow with much greater detail than what I'm going to get into. But all right, let's go ahead and jump into UI coverage, and let's talk a little bit about how you and your team can get value from it. So what is UI coverage, right? Well, whenever we first talk about this, we try to use something that you may be familiar with, right? So let's just take a moment and compare UI coverage with traditional code coverage tools. Unlike code coverage tools, which track and measure the lines of source that you've tested, UI coverage tracks the interactive elements found across all of your individual application states. And it also tracks every interaction you performed across all of your tests, and then gives you a nice visual overlay of this coverage information layered directly on top of your application, which makes it super easy for anyone to understand exactly what's in these reports. And in a nutshell, we've designed UI coverage to specifically help your team visualize, identify, and understand what is or isn't tested, to improve your testing practices by enabling you to prioritize things like critical flows that may have missing coverage. It's going to help you monitor for changes, prevent coverage reductions, and finally, it's going to help you optimize your test suite and point out things like areas you may have over-tested that are unnecessary, that are just leading to wasted CI resources or developer time maintaining, running, that sort of thing. All right, so when we talk about visualizing coverage, right, this is going to give you really clear insight into every uncovered area across your application. And that means, like, for every individual commit, when you run in CI and when you record to our cloud, we're automatically going to measure every individual page state, or component if you're happening to write component tests and mounting components. And then within each area, we're going to give you really detailed reports which specifically call out and help you understand exactly what is or isn't tested. This is the classic UI. It's, like I said, it's kind of inspired from code coverage. But over here, you basically have a breakdown, like every interactive element is highlighted for you, and we organize every individual page to show you exactly what isn't tested and what is. And I'm not going to be doing a demo, but I've got some animated GIFs here just to give you an idea of what it looks like when it's running. Just like with test replay, with test replay, you know, you can basically replay everything that an individual tested, and you can interact with the DOM. Both UI coverage and accessibility are built with that same architecture, so I can interact with my application exactly how it rendered. And even though I've already mentioned it, like, everything is fully integrated into test replay. So if you're looking at your coverage or looking at your accessibility and trying to understand how did this state get reached in my application, you can just pop open test replay and basically see every individual step that went into producing that unique application state. All right, so with UI coverage, we're going to make it super easy for you to basically identify and find and understand where you have coverage and where you miss stuff. And then, of course, what are you going to do with that information? You're going to close the testing gaps that you've prioritized. As part of sort of the architecture of how we built this, you can almost think of it as we have this like enormous dependency graph where we understand the relationship of every test and test action and what state it traversed through. So we're basically going to pinpoint the exact snapshot that something was found in, and we're also give you the programmatic tools, like if you wanted to ensure that your coverage never dipped below a certain amount, you can wire some of the programmatic APIs that we've built in CI and basically ensure that your coverage scores never drop. So the idea is that by doing that, if there's ever a change either in your test code or your application code, you'll be able to react to it programmatically and prevent any sort of coverage score from dropping. Here's another example. In here, I'm basically just sorting my pages by the highest or the lowest amount of coverage. And with this, basically, I'm looking at an untested element. I'm seeing all the individual unique states that it was found in. And now I'm going through and sorting by just the untested elements, so I can understand, you know, how often an element was seen, whether it was just in one snapshot or whether it was basically found across the entire application. So like I said, there's sort of a massive dependency graph that basically surfaces the relationship and the prevalence of how often an element is seen across your application. Next thing is we are going to give you, as I mentioned earlier, on every single run in UI coverage, we create like a unique score for that run. So as you branch, you'll be able to see those scores changing to be able to know, is coverage improving or is it getting worse over time? As I already mentioned, if you have certain branches or certain workflows where you don't want coverage to drop, maybe it's in a production branch or a develop branch or anything like that, you can programmatically configure UI coverage to fail, depending upon what the situation is and what sort of workflow you're trying to model. And that's basically represented here. We've got a few different commits on a branch, and you can see the coverage score changing over time. So this will give you the ability to understand whether things are getting better or getting worse. Another example that we see get leveraged by the users who have had early access to this feature is besides figuring out or prioritizing untested areas, one of the other advantages or benefits of UI coverage is to also see where you may have over-tested. This happens a lot with larger teams and larger test suites that really no one has like a perfect picture in their head of every test and what every individual action is happening within the tests. And so with UI coverage, it's basically going to surface to you and sort and weight the elements that have been potentially tested an excessive number of times. This allows you to go in and sort of prune the redundant test cases, save CI resources, and stop wasting time and energy on things that aren't actually adding any unique coverage, if you will. So this is an example of this. Like in this case, we have a interactive element here, and we can see like it was interacted with 12 times. It was clicked 12 times across 4 tests. This allows us to see sort of every individual location or place in the test through test replay that interacted with it. And here in this example, I'm going to the tested elements, and I can see that 25 tests and 34 different interactions interacted with this element, and I can basically trace between the individual tests or the actions. I can use test replay to understand what this is doing and clean up anything if I deemed it necessary. And with that, we'll switch over to Cypress Accessibility. And so what is Cypress Accessibility, right? So this is a system that, just like UI coverage, once you flip on with, or once you turn on with a flip of a switch, this is automatically going to ingest every unique state of your application that the tests see. Basically, anything that is under test is going to get scanned in, and we are automatically going to surface to you all of the unique accessibility rule violations that we found. There's absolutely no setup or configuration. You don't have to write a single line of code. And as we kind of compare and contrast this solution to other, either commercial or open source competitors or incumbents in the ecosystem, probably the biggest difference here is that most other tools run inside the browser, or they run with your tests, if you will. Like, they compete with those same resources. They have to do a lot of really expensive operations, whereas everything that we've built with Cypress Accessibility runs entirely behind the scenes. It doesn't impact test runtimes, performance. It doesn't change the outcome of a test. It's all done after the fact, and you don't have to sort of make any specific trade-offs like with typical open source tools like Cypress Acts. Accessibility checks can be really expensive, and you have to do those all within your code. So a developer has to basically make a conscious choice when to run this and when not to. With our solution, it runs on every individual unique state, and there's no trade-off or compromise that you have to make. So the That's what we mean by incredibly thorough and comprehensive checks. Um, what we've seen, running this on our user system is that often we are running thousands, tens of thousands of individual checks, um, which is not something that you would come anywhere close to if you were having to basically add those individual checks to your code base. Just like with UI coverage, this is fully supported for end-to-end as well as component tests. First thing you'll notice is basically we run, an insane amount of checks that are super comprehensive. So we've built a really easy to use system that's going to aggregate, present all the results for you. It's fully both powered and integrated with Test Replay. There's plenty of integrations and programmatic APIs to interact with the results, and lots of configuration to basically customize its specific behavior. So with Cypress Accessibility, it's going to automatically detect all the violations and issues automatically. It's going to give you continuous reports so you can see and track your scores over time. Just like with UI coverage and Test Replay, you're going to have all the capabilities of using your native built-in dev tooling to inspect the DOM, the accessibility tree, and of course, we make it super easy to collaborate on the issues, to share out deep link to the specific violations so that anyone on your team or other teams can basically help contribute to accessibility. So we see a lot of different teams in different sort of maturity states of accessibility. Sometimes they're brand new, sometimes they've been doing it for a while. And ultimately, like, we're going to give you all the tooling and the power to shift left as far as you want to go, programmatic APIs so that you can catch failures basically before they merge. And just as you'd expect, like, you can effectively filter and facet and aggregate based on severity, based on rule violation. We're going to surface all of that to you so that, depending upon your whether you're just getting started or you've been doing this a long time, you have the tools and capability to basically come up with, an organizational plan when approaching accessibility. You could focus on a certain subset of rules, or you could focus on a certain type of violation. It's super flexible and can accommodate a lot of different needs. This is generally what it looks like. It's similar to UI coverage in that it gives you like a top-down view of all the violation by page, but it also gives you a bottoms-up view where if you care more about like individual rules across all of your pages, it's going to aggregate the information that way as well. So if we take a look at it, this is the top-down view from individual pages. This is the rules view, and in this case, like, I'm searching for buttons that don't have discernible text. It's able to find it. I can click on the violation and go straight to that state of the DOM, see the error exactly as it was captured in the application, along with a lot of helpful hints and explanation help text that helps me understand exactly why that violation occurred and steps that I can do to remediate it. Just like with UI coverage, you're going to be able to see and track the progress over time and use, programmatic API tools if you wanted to block PRs depending upon your workflow. Same thing as UI coverage. You basically get an individual accessibility score per run. You can always go back to it and track your progress over time. As I mentioned before, because we're capturing every unique state, this gives you really advanced debugging capabilities. You can fully inspect the DOM. This is going to help speed up the triage, the mean time to resolution, make it super easy to understand exactly what the source of the accessibility problem was. This is an example of using the accessibility tools, like within the dev tools. I can, of course, inspect the DOM, print out elements to the console, inspect them, and then just pop open the accessibility tree the same way that if I was running my app locally. Last but not least, you've got team collaboration. You can basically deep link and share all the results. We're also working on a couple different integrations to automatically send this to Jira, and this is one of the latest things we're working on that makes it, if you want to get the data in other systems, really simple. So this is just a simple example where any link that we give you is deep linkable, it's shareable. So if you're looking at a specific violation, you can just share the URL with anyone on your team and they will go straight to that individual state and that individual violation exactly as you're looking at. All right, so we spent the last year building, innovating, and maturing and hardening these products. We started it about a year ago. And even though we're still relatively early in our journey towards solving app quality, hopefully you see how this is starting to come together. And with UI coverage and accessibility generally available, and with the simple flip of a switch, we've been able to extend the value of your existing tests and answer two of the previous questions about quality, which raises a question. Where do we go from here? And we still have plenty more to do, and it's already planned with both UI coverage and accessibility. We've got plenty of incremental features that are currently in flight. So when I'm asking this question, I'm really asking well, what beyond just sort of the status quo? And if you attended my talk last year and kind of follow along with what I'm saying, we have still other questions that we want to answer about app quality that could result in new product opportunities the same way as UI coverage and accessibility. And that's something I talked about last year. It's something that we're specifically still super interested in, which is visual regression testing. But I kind of want to take a little bit of a detour here and talk about something else. I'm sure everyone here has noticed there's been a huge amount of advancements in AI. And since we have built this whole new data pipeline that powers the app quality products that we've released thus far, over the last few months, we have been looking at a number of different AI opportunities and basically seeing if we could take advantage of some of the new power and capabilities that's out there. And we've specifically been looking at, are there AI-powered workflows that we could reach for to help us realize our vision more effectively. And at Cypress, we don't believe in doing AI for the sake of just saying that we have AI. We don't believe users want to use AI just because it's called that. We believe users want to use valid solutions to real problems that creates real value for them. And as such, any AI opportunity that we look at is just measured relative to everything else that we could build or invest in. AI is just a tool, but if it could solve real problems and create real value for us, then of course, we'd seek to leverage it. So I want to take this opportunity to share the way that we have been organizing our thoughts around AI and describe the type of investment areas that we see AI potentially provide some real value in. And the way that I'm thinking about it, just trying to breaking this into three broad categories. You have assistants, analysis agents, and test co-pilots. Examples of assistants, meaning something that's going to help you solve a already identified problem, help take an action. Simple examples of this is we detect flaky tests, and obviously we detect failures. And so any sort of assistant that can go in there and basically triage the problem for you, or even suggest an action that you can take, that's an example of an assistant. Analysis agent, a few different examples of that, whether it's anomaly detection or looking at the test code changes and basically analyzing and making recommendations about that, you modified this code or this test here and it had this side effect, or you modified the application code and it had this impact across all these areas. And the last one, when we talk about test copilots, specifically we mean doing AI-based test gen, but from a variety of different sources, where the sources could be things like observability logs in production, or production like product analytics, like user sessions, or even things like looking at your app code, or signals that come from our own like internal products, like from the from app quality. And specifically when it comes to these areas of AI opportunities, I did want to pause here because it's an opportunity to bring up Peter, who is going to double click into a few of the use cases for applying AI here.
Cool. Thank you very much, Brian. So what I'll kind of be going over with that stage set is how some of these AI assistant concepts are really coming together in practice with UI coverage. And this is kind of starting from the foundation of the last year of building UI coverage and working with a lot of early access customers. And we've been using that time to dig really deep into the problems that users are having with understanding their test coverage and also addressing it. When looking at a report in UI coverage, we can really quickly and easily pinpoint the gaps, and that is the primary value. But the question then arises, then what? Each untested element that we get in a UI coverage report is representative of a user flow or action that is missing coverage. And logically, it follows that the appropriate response to each problem that UI coverage highlights is to introduce a new test case to close that coverage gap. But that is the hard part. Now that UI coverage makes those previous steps so simple, this is actually where we see a lot of the opportunity to improve the actionability and this test authoring experience that is challenging. And as we've been working with our early access customers over the last year, we've heard a few of these repeated themes about why it's challenging to take action on missed coverage. The first point is there are a lot of steps that are involved in adding new coverage in the first place. And this leads to there being this overhead of even deciding where to invest, because the investment does take a lot of time and energy. Teams spend a lot of cycles reviewing their coverage results and prioritizing different areas across their application, because the resources available for actually taking action on that data is limited. And when they do choose to take action to close a coverage gap, the process of doing that is typically a matter of going on a little bit of a scavenger hunt through your spec files, trying to figure out what belongs where, what's the best place to test this specific user flow, where are there similar tests that you can take inspiration from or structure from. And this entire process is very prone to human error. And humans, even the best and brightest, cannot keep their entire test suite in context, in memory, when making decisions, which inevitably leads to things like adding redundant or duplicate coverage, or adding tests into non-optimal locations that are going to be hard to find or maintain later on. And finally, the tests themselves are also not immune to human error. Writing really good tests is pretty hard, and it requires a lot of knowledge and consistency and nuance. And some of that is specific to the specific context, organization, or code base. And it's also not obvious to everyone who's working across a code base, especially if they're working on a new area that they haven't touched before. And when you introduce new tests, that always has the chance of introducing anti-patterns or even just diverging from practices that are already established in other areas of your test suite. And all of this can also lead to and contribute to technical debt. And as we began to work through this set of problems, the question also came up of, can we leverage the information that UI coverage already has in order to solve this problem and make it easier to close coverage gaps faster? Which leads us to how we're solving this with test generation. If we start with the context of UI coverage, when a user is looking at a UI coverage report, they're already one click away from taking an action on each untested element in their application. By leveraging this same context that they're already in, anyone on the team has the ability to not only see where the gaps are, but also take action on them. And we put ourselves in this position where we can start to significantly cut down on the steps that you need to take to close the coverage gaps that UI coverage is already making abundantly clear through this tooling. And the goal is, by making this process quicker and easier and more efficient, team members can easily add coverage for testing gaps, regardless of how familiar they are with the existing test suite and the existing processes. And the idea is that generating tests through a system like UI coverage, which has all of the context of your existing test suite and all of the context of all the different states of your application, means that you also get better, more consistent tests that don't deviate from best practices and don't deviate from internal standards and other structures that are already set up throughout your test suite. And this means that, again, tests are written more consistently. It means reduced technical debt and less work down the line. And all of this kind of comes together to lead us to test generation for UI coverage. And this is a feature that I'm excited to share we're actively investing in within the context of UI coverage. And it's something that both ourselves and our customers see a lot of potential in, because by evolving in this direction, UI coverage, which has kind of already taken a huge step towards changing the way that you understand the coverage of your application, also begins to revolutionize the feedback loop of not only identifying the coverage gaps, but also efficiently and quickly addressing them. And of course, this doesn't end here either. This can also go beyond just Cypress Cloud. We see test generation as a perfect opportunity to naturally integrate this functionality into the Cypress app. So I can personally absolutely envision a world where the Cypress app begins to leverage this intelligence to automatically generate tests, for example, as you write your application code. And we're exploring a lot of these different avenues for leveraging this information and these data streams in a lot of different form factors to solve a lot of different really valuable problems. And in summary, we've seen this problem with our customers a lot. And we see these problems that our customers are facing with addressing coverage gaps. And it's driven this investment in test generation as kind of our foray into leveraging AI capabilities to enhance this whole workflow of understanding and addressing testing gaps. And if you're interested in the future of UI coverage and test generation and how we're able to essentially automatically address testing gaps with tests that are functional and correct and consistent, then I would recommend requesting a trial by visiting that UI coverage link in the resources section. And for those of you who do, I'm excited to connect and talk more about how these solutions can make your own workflow more efficient.
Thank you so much, Peter and Brian. This session was very insightful. I think it provided a lot of great information on where Cypress is going in the future, and I'm super excited for the announcement of GA for the app quality features.